On the table today, we've got the Pro Boat Stealthwake, and I have a little tip for everybody that I only learned about recently. Today, we're going to talk about the trim tabs and the turn fins. So, trim tab, turn fin. So, what we discovered is that if you loosen the two screws on your trim tabs that hold the whole trim tab turn fin assembly in place, you can actually move this up and down. You can angle it, so you can actually adjust your trim tabs and your turn fin for different handling characteristics. So as you can see, there is a fair amount of movement. It looks like there's a fairly sizable hole or a slot that holds those turn fins and trim tabs on, so you can move that around as needed. So one thing you got to keep in mind though is you need to make sure that the edge of your trim tab is parallel to that edge of your hull, because if you have it tipped sideways, where it's crooked, not only will that impact your performance, but more importantly is that your turn fin being connected to the trim tab, you don't want your turn fin off angle. You really want your turn fin to be perpendicular 90 degrees to the angle of the bottom of your hull. So when you do move this, make sure you move it and keeping the bottom edge parallel to the hull and your turn fin perpendicular. By moving this trim tab all the way down, but what's happening here is this surface of your trim tab is actually below the surface of the hull. So if I put a straight edge on there, you would actually see that this is below the edge of your hull. So you can kind of see there a little bit. You can almost see that edge being a little bit lower than that edge. What that does is it gets your bow down into the water, and actually makes the boat run a little slower, but we'll show you what that looks like in this first clip. You can move that trim tab all the way up so that there's a pretty significant gap between the bottom edge of the trim tab and the bottom of the hull. So really at that point, your trim tab isn't even really touching the water. We've never actually run it that way, but I have a feeling it'll just keep the bow higher. So the way we have it set and the way it came set from Pro Boat is that the bottom edge of your trim tab here is basically level with the bottom surface of the hull. So that gets your bow up a little bit. As you'll see in this next clip, when this surface of your trim tab is pretty much even with the bottom surface of your hull, that it runs a little bit bow high, but it runs really well, especially on flat water. So you might be asking, why are we going through this? Part of the reason you want to be able to adjust your trim tabs is for different water conditions. When it's really wavy, you want your bow down lower into the water, so you want your trim tab lower. Ideally, you'd want the back edge of your trim tab to be, again, basically level with the bottom of your hull, and then actually change the angle of your trim tab to push down a little bit further, so you have a little bit of an angle, and that gets your bow down, and that helps you cut through the waves instead of skipping over them. So in this next clip, where we are running in the rougher water, had I known we could adjust the trim tabs, I probably would have been able to get that bow down, and then it actually would have run a little bit better. So again, if you need to adjust your trim tabs for your different water conditions, all you got to do is loosen these two screws, move that trim tab up or down, make sure the plane of your trim tab is parallel to the bottom edge of the hull, and that your turn fin stays perpendicular to the bottom edge of that hull. Hopefully that tip will help you with the different running conditions you might find yourself in, and enjoy the Stealthwake.